Howdy folks, and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Lore with me, Tenopia. In this episode, we're going to be featuring one of the Empire's best starfighters, the mighty TIE Defender. For years, Imperial starfighters have been outgunned and outrun by the Rebel Alliance's X-Wings and A-Wings. The TIE Defender was the Empire's attempt to finally even up the odds of space combat. Now, with the defection of the Incom Corporation's senior design team, which was a major coup for the Rebel Alliance, the team did not just change sides, they also brought with them the only designs for their legendary X-Wing fighter. Fast, highly maneuverable and equipped with their own hyperdrives, these craft were also well armoured and boosted robust deflector shields. In comparison, although the Empire's TIE fighters were relatively speedy and agile, in a dogfight they didn't stand much of a chance. It was the need to compete with the X-Wing that was the main driver behind the design of each successive generation of Imperial TIE fighter, starting with the short-lived TIE Advanced X-1. Although arguably the X-Wing's equal, the Advance proved to be hugely expensive to produce and the Empire discontinued it following the prototype stage. The TIE Interceptor, the successor to the TIE Advance, was much cheaper to build, having no hyperdrive and also no shields. Imperial strategists argue that its extra speed capability, together with its ability to roll and turn with stunning ease, will be adequate compensation for the lack of defensive systems. However, while the Interceptors were able to fly rings around X-Wings, the robustness of the Rebels' starfighters was such that the Interceptor remained inferior in a combat situation. When the TIE Defender was introduced, Imperial propagandists claimed that it was the next logical step in the evolution of the TIE class of starfighter. In reality, the Empire's military strategists had finally admitted that they needed to respond fully to the threat posed by the Alliance's one-man starfighters. This admission had been brought about for two reasons. Firstly, the cost of replacing TIE squadrons was beginning to prove prohibitive, particularly when the Empire was struggling to pay for a second Death Star. More positively, having fighters with an onboard hyperdrive would allow the Imperial fleet to be more flexible, for its fighters would no longer have to be ferried into battle on board capital ships. So vital was the new ship to the Imperial Navy that its design and development was supervised by a number of top naval commanders. Following its initial testing, the TIE Defender was passed on to a number of elite units for full field trials. To the frustration of the Empire, these trials were never particularly extensive and the TIE Defender saw little action against the rebellion. Indeed, the fighter was most extensively used in the battle with renegade Imperial Admiral Zarin during his abortive attempt to overthrow Emperor Palpatine shortly before the Battle of Endor. In the event, it was the outcome of the fighting over Endor's forest moon that brought the TIE Defender's short life to an end. The turmoil that followed the Emperor's death came on top of the fact that each Defender produced cost 5 times more than a traditional TIE fighter. As its design requirement had been that the Defender would exceed the mission capability of a fight group of 4 standard TIEs, pure economics helped to sound its death bell. The TIE Defender boasted a series of innovations, the most obvious being the fact that it did not have the traditional paired wings. Instead, it boasted a tri-wing assembly. The decision to adopt a third wing was made for 2 reasons. Firstly, the energy collected by the wing's solar panels would help to increase the vessel's range, and secondly, the maneuvering jets built into all 3 wings meant that the Defender was virtually able to turn on a 1 credit piece. The single difficulty presented by this wing configuration was the fact that it caused an aft blind spot, which resulted in some grumbling on the part of Imperial pilots assigned to Defender squadrons. Now, of course, the Defender would not have been a TIE if it did not have twin ion engines, but even these have been upgraded to an entirely new ion engine design, the PSC 9.7, that allowed the Defender to travel 40% faster than a traditional TIE craft. This extra speed was achieved despite the Defender's weight. The vehicle's design included armor plating, 2 novel deck shield generators and a hyperdrive, all of which made it significantly heavier than any of its predecessors. The TIE Defender was also better armed than previous starfighters in the series. In contrast to the original TIE Fighter's pair of laser cannons, the Defender was equipped with no less than 4, as well as 2 ion cannons and a couple of missile launchers. Combined with its hyperdrive, this state-of-the-art armory made the Defender a vessel to be feared. It was fortunate for the rebellion that it was never properly deployed on the galactic battlefield. And now, with all that in mind, I am also aware that With the TIE Defender's arrival in Star Wars Rebels, this may change its background history and lore a little bit. Namely being that it was Grand Admiral Thrawn's idea. It was Grand Admiral Thrawn that would have oversaw the whole production of it, and it was kind of competing for resources at the same time for the Death Star. So yeah, it was now a prototype before the first Death Star was even finished being built. And it was competing for resources that Director Krennic wanted for the Death Star. And it was Governor Price trying to kill Kanan and Ezra and the rebels in Lothal that kind of butchered the project by destroying the fuel supply they needed to produce the TIE Defender, which no doubt is now what brought the history of it to what brought the production of the TIE Defender to a halt. Whether or not they continue to try and produce it afterwards, I'm not sure, but I do know that it was in prototype stages before the Battle of Yavin now. So anyway, and with all that said and done, that's some Star Wars lore behind the TIE Defender. If you like the video, be sure to hit the like. If you're new, be sure to subscribe, and don't forget to drop a comment or two whether you like the video or whether you didn't like it, or even with a suggestion for a lore video if you like, and I'll see if I can get around to making a lore video on that. And so I'll catch you all later, and have a good one.